In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
Carl Gustav Jung has been many things to many people, while literary scholars have found his ideas about archetypes and the collective unconscious theoretically limiting. Osho, the Indian guru, was full of praise for Jung's discovery of synchronicity, the law of all causality, which seemed to capture something that Eastern spirituality has always known. American psychologist Elaine Aron credited Carl Gustav Jung with the discovery of innate sensitivity, which she expanded on and popularized through her concept of high sensitivity. Although Jung never elaborated on the idea, there is evidence that he thought of himself as somehow different in terms of sensitivity and perception. Aron dedicated the major part of her research to this subject and found that sensitivity is more pronounced in a minority of the population, 15 to 20%, according to Aron. And that their way of perceiving and processing external stimuli is significantly different than the majority. These may be the introverts, creative people, visionaries, and the potential prophets whose complex perception and heightened empathy allow them to register subtle information and forebodings. This difference has a biological purpose and exists in the animal world, too. It has been observed with packs of wolves, for example, that the abnormal collective makeup of the proverbial lonely wolf ultimately serves the survival of the collective. As with wolves, so with men, according to Aron. The highly sensitives are the ones who are able to warn the group, even if they may not function so well in daily life. I have chosen to highlight this factor because high sensitivity is relevant to Jung's approach to the supernatural, especially his own experiences with ghosts, which I would like to discuss in the following.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Abercast. I'm John Towers. We're recording here deep within the heart of quarantine zone Charlie in the People's Republic of Pennsylvania. Fresh on a new lockdown. We had to bust our lockdown shoes back out. We never really got off a lockdown. But now they're telling us if we're by ourselves outside our house, we have to wear a mask. And it's really fucking silly watching all these people in their cars drive around by themselves with their masks on. I guess everyone's just waiting for the mask police to come knocking. How many people here do you have at your Thanksgiving Day dinner? 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11. Wait, there's too many. Got to get the mask police to pull us over. Yeah, it's all the silliness. Trying not to add to the silliness too much. So with that, I will just say Thanksgiving is coming up. It is the unique American holiday, and don't let the man give it to you too hard. You know what I mean? Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is usually around the time, also the night before Thanksgiving is like one of the biggest DUI holidays ever. So they're out there. They don't give a fuck about your Fifth Amendment rights. They don't give a fuck, and they're looking for you. So if you're in a place where God love you, you can, God bless you. If you're in a place where there's a bar open after 10 o'clock at night, be careful on your way home, bros. Call one of those Ubers. So I thought we would do something a little bit different this evening. I've been carrying this around. This has been on my stack of stuff to do for quite a while, and I thought that it would be nice to go ahead and get it done and out of the way. We're going to be talking about Carl Gustav Jung and the ghosts. This is a piece written by Claudia Richter, and it kind of talks about Jung's, we know Jung, we did the hero's journey, all the Joseph Campbell stuff, quite a while ago now, but we talk a lot about archetypes when we, talk about entertainment and myths and these old stories, like the stories of Roland and all of this. So, that's how we know Jung. We know Jung from like the depth psychology and the archetypes and all this other kind of stuff. But I thought we'd get into something that people don't really talk about, and this is like his kind of ghost stories and how he drugged this stuff kicking and screaming along with the rest of his psychology that he introduced. So this also scratches my, the occult as psychology stuff, which we talk about often here. So let's get into it. This is Claudia Richter's thing, and I read there the cold open was the introduction to the piece. If you're a Patreon or Subscribe Star supporter, thank you very much. My vessel of the art is raised to you, my friends. And if you're a Patreon and Subscribe Star supporter, check your Patreon or Subscribe Star sites, because big changes are coming in January. And I don't want anyone to be surprised. I've sent multiple emails. Everyone should know what's going on by now. All right, here we go. Wotan's army of departed souls at his tower in Bollingen in the spring of 1924. Carl Gustav Jung had one of his numerous encounters with the other world. In the night, he heard footsteps around the tower, and the sound of voices singing and music, in which seemed to come closer. He wasn't sure if he was dreaming or not. He went to the window and opened it and he saw nothing. He went back to sleep and had the same dream again of voices and footsteps and singing again. He woke up, and in the waking state still heard the sounds. The image of several hundred dark-clad figures presented itself in his mind. When he went to the window, there was again nothing, and Jung concluded that something ghostly must have taken place. It was only much later that he came across the 17th century chronicle from Lucerne, which offered some clarification. The author of the chronicle, Renoir Sisat, I'm going to do that. The author of the chronicle, Renoir Sisat, had a very similar, nice, I just found a typo, had a very similar experience in the Swiss Alps while spending the night on a high pasture of Mount Pilate. He too had heard a procession at night close to his hut with men talking and singing and making music. Sisat noted that the pasture was notorious for apparitions, and it was said that Wotan to this day practiced his magic arts there. A local shepherd explained the next day that Sisat's nocturnal experience had surely been of Wotan's army of departed souls, also known as the Selig Lut in the Swiss dialect, who were in the habit of walking abroad and showing themselves. In explaining these parallel events, Jung considers the possibility of a phenom of solitude, compensatory hallucination common with hermits, for example, and people who spend long time in solitude. Their minds, they reproduce the company that is lacking in real life. However, since Jung is aware that premonitions or visions very often have some correspondence in external reality, he finds it equally convincing to think that his solitude might have sharpened his senses in a way that he was able to perceive the actual procession of the souls of the dead. Jung is also reminded of another historical parallel, namely the former existence of the so-called Ries la Fudeur, who was a mercenary army of young Swiss men who were usually gathered each spring before marching from central Switzerland to Italy, with singing and jollity, bidding farewell to their native land. Jung thought that he might have witnessed one of these past gatherings, although he fails to explicate in detail by which laws of nature this information could have been transmitted to him. He hints at synchronicity as a possible explanation. A haunted house. In the summer of 1920, Carl Gustav Jung was invited to England. His host and colleague had referred to him as Mr. X and booked the last country cottage that was still available during the summer holiday at a remarkably cheap rate. The highly attractive cottage was situated in Buckinghamshire, and they were planning to spend their weekends there, and Jung took the room on the first floor. On the first night of their first weekend, he was exhausted from work, and he slept immediately. From that second night onwards, however, he did not sleep well at all. The air felt stifling, and there was a strange smell in the room. But he could not figure out what it was, where it was coming from, or what it reminded him of, except that there was something sick about it. He went to bed with the windows open, but the stench remained, despite the fresh air coming in with the night wind that was blowing softly through the room, filling it with the flowery scent of the high summer. Throughout the sojourn, his discomfort prevented him from getting a good night's rest, and Mr. X recommended drinking a bottle of beer before going to bed, which did have a relaxing effect. Here. But only temporary. Lying awake, Jung tried to pinpoint what the smell reminded him of. At last, the image of an old woman, with an open carcinoma, I don't know what that is, came to mind, whom he had treated in a hospital. The smell reminded him of her room. During the following weekends, more strange things happened. There was the sound of dripping water. Although there was no water, something brushed along the walls. The furniture creaked. Now here and now there. There was rustlings in the corners, and a strange restlessness was in the air. Jung noticed that the maids never stayed in the house past sunset. When he asked them whether there was something wrong with the house, they told him that it was haunted. Matter-of-factly, they were like, yo, fucking Mr. X, this shit is haunted as fuck. Didn't he know that? The fifth weekend was unbearable, and Jung recalls. It was a beautiful moonlight night with no wind in the room, and there was rustlings and creakings and bangings from outside. Blows rained on the walls, and I had the feeling there was something near me, and opened my eyes, and there beside me on the pillow I saw the head of an old woman with the right eye wide open glared at me. And the left half of the face was missing below the eye, and the sight of it was so sudden and unexpected that I leapt out of the bed with one bound. I lit the candle and spent the rest of the night in an armchair. The next day I moved into an adjoining room where I slept splendidly. There was no longer disturbed during this or the following weekend. The story was published in 1950 in a book on hauntings by Fanny Mosier, for which Jung also wrote the preface. Again, the narrative concludes with Jung's attempt to explain the experience from a psychological point of view. While he cannot find an explanation for the dripping noise, he is willing to admit that the other sounds were probably not objective perceptions, but that this hypnoid state had made them seem exaggeratedly loud. As for the vision of the old woman in his bed, he interprets it as a hypoagogic hallucination, and was probably a reconstruction of the memory of the old woman with a carcinoma. When he comes to the olfactory hallucination, he presumes yet another important cognitive function which man has in common with the animals. Coming now to the olfactory hallucination, I had the impression that my presence in the room gradually activated something that was somehow connected with the walls. Common speech links intuition with the nose. I had smelt something, he says. If the olfactory organ in man were not so hopelessly degenerate but as highly developed as a dog, I would have undoubtedly had a clearer idea of the persons who had lived in the room earlier. Primitive medicine men can not only smell out a thief, but they also smell spirits and ghosts. The smell may have embodied a psychic situation of the excitatory nature it carried across to the percipient. It is by no means impossible when we consider the extraordinary importance of the sense of smell in animals. I myself have had a number of experiences in which psychic smells or olfactory hallucinations turned out to be subliminal intuitions, which I was able to verify afterwards. You know what this reminds me of? So between the army and wrestling and, living the life that I led, I've had my nose busted 5 times. This beautiful nose that's on my face, this scarred, crooked fucking nose has been busted 5 times, and I'm lucky if I can get one nostril at a time to work. Literally, there was a time, especially when I was smoking, I was a pack-a-day smoker for a long time. I quit that shit. I haven't smoked a cigarette in a long time. But, where I just couldn't smell. I couldn't detect smells. And so if anyone was acting weird around me at all, there was this always thing in the back of my mind where I'm like, does my breath stink? Did I remember to put deodorant on? Do I smell funny? I used to get paranoid, son, about that shit. Okay, back to it. The hypothesis naturally does not pretend to explain all ghost phenomenon, but at most a certain category of them. I have heard and read a great many ghost stories, and among them are a few that could very well be explained in this way. For instance, there are all those stories of ghost haunting rooms where a murder was committed. In one case, bloodstains were visible under the carpet. A dog would surely have smelt it. It would have smelt the blood and perhaps recognized it as human. And if he possessed a human imagination, he would have also been able to reconstruct the essential features of the crime. Our unconscious, which possesses very much more subtle powers of perception and reconstruction than our conscious mind, could do the same thing. To project a visionary picture of the psychic situation that excited it. Whereas Jung finds the rational explanation of the acoustic and visual hallucinations, seeing them as products of his own psyche, he speculates about the physical reason for, ooh, that smell. Can't you smell that smell? The smell that's around you. Although he seems to imply here that the psychic situation might be recorded in smell, and that a smell could transmit information from the past to the present. The idea of smelling something and receiving information from the unconscious is indeed something that had a particular fascination for Jung. And the identification with animals and primitive men is crucial to his entire worldview. In his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, he recalls an incident where he recounted the life of a man at a dinner table without knowing him. Jung unwittingly gave an exemplary account of an imaginary criminal, which happened to be the exact description of the life of the man sitting opposite of him. Jung refers to him this strange and hitherto unclassified form of cognition as archaic, and again as something that likens him with animals. He writes, I too have this archaic nature in me, is linked with the gift, not always pleasant, of seeing people and things as they are. I cannot let myself be deceived. From here to Tipperary, when I don't want to recognize something, and yet at bottom I know quite well how matters really stand. In this I am like a dog. I can be tricked, but always smells it out at the end. This insight is based on instinct or on a participation mystique with others. It is as if the eyes of the background do the seeing in an impersonal act of perception. In all of these experiences, a special kind of sensitivity is crucial, of which Jung is very aware. In 1960, a year prior to his death, he writes, paranormal psychic phenomenon have interested me all my life. Usually they occur in acute psychological states. Emotionality, depression, shock, etc. Or more frequently with individuals characterized by a particular or pathological personality structure, where the threshold of the collective unconscious is habitually lowered. People with creative genius also belong to this type. Hear, hear. So we run into this problem all the time, right? Like in popular culture, there's a trope, detective stories. There's a trope of the psychic detective, which I believe is the sign of a lazy writer, or like a writer that's not real good at writing procedure. Anyhow, so there's this psychic detective, and then there's a whole secondary trope about, like Will Graham. I was a gigantic Tom Harris fan when I was growing up. Like Silence of the Lambs, the movie, hit at just the right time in my life. I've spoken about it before, how I used to treat those books as kind of like the sort of like I don't want to say Bible, like I wasn't living my life to them, but they really took a lot of my time. And in The Red Dragon, this isn't Clarice Starling. She is not a psychic detective at all. But in The Red Dragon, there's this character, he's kind of like a washed up FBI agent in the thing, but well, everyone watches that the show Hannibal or whatever, and they're like, oh my god, like Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter are totally like boyfriend and boyfriend. Anyhow, in The Red Dragon, Thomas Harris goes out of his way, and a lot of people, or there's a character or two in the books that are like kind of hint to the idea that they think Will Graham is some kind of psychic or something. And he's like, it's not like that. It's imaginative thinking. And I think that this is kind of what Jung is talking about here, this pathological personality structure. They, in the Hannibal TV show, they kind of pass it off as he's kind of like on an Asperger's spectrum or something like that. That wasn't Harris's, and that wasn't Harris's take on the character of Will Graham at all. And it's crystal clear, because his Will Graham was able to have a wife. He was a good dad. He was a good husband until the end of the book. But he was able to keep his shit together during social situations. So that's something that just came along as like the sign of the times, was this idea that he had Asperger's syndrome, or he was on some kind of autism spectrum. But he would say it's this terrible imagination that I have, and I was fascinated by that. In high school, reading that and just being like, oh my god, like that's an amazing superpower to have, and everybody can have it. And then after high school, probably when I, like right around the time, I don't know, whatever, Twin Peaks came out, and Twin Peaks had this thing where Special Agent Dale Cooper also had these moments where he was psychic, or it seemed like he was psychic. But if you dig in, there's an episode at the very beginning, like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 episodes in, where he explains that it's not him being psychic. He's not psychic at all, but he's also Jungian in this way where he partners this idea of synchronicities. He's making synchronicities happen to judge their importance to the case he's working on. They call it the Tibetan method, and I actually went and found it because it tickles me so bad. I fucking love it. Let's see if I can get it going. Here we go.
By way of explaining what we're about to do, I am first going to tell you a little bit about the country
of Tibet,
called Tibet. An extremely spiritual country. For centuries, the leader of Tibet has been known as the Dalai Lama. In 1950, Communist China invaded Tibet, and while leaving the Dalai Lama nominally in charge, they in fact seized control of the entire country. In 1959, after a Tibetan uprising against the Chinese, the Dalai Lama was forced to flee to India for his life and has lived in exile ever since. Following a dream I had 3 years ago, I have become deeply moved by the plight of the Tibetan people and filled with a desire to help them. I also awoke from the same dream, realizing that I had subconsciously gained knowledge of a deductive technique involving mind-body coordination operating hand in hand with the deepest level of intuition. Sheriff, Deputy Hawk, if you will please assist me, I will now demonstrate. You will recall on the day of her death, Laura Palmer wrote the following entry in her diary. Nervous about meeting Jay tonight. Today, we're going to concentrate on the Jays. Harry, when I give the word, would you please read aloud each of the names I've written on the blackboard?
Okie doke.
Deputy Hawk, stand over here and hold this bucket of rocks up near me where I can get to them. Would you please put on the kitchen mittens? Deputy Andy, move down, stand by the bottle. Lucy, take this piece of chalk. Not too near, Andy.
Oh, getting excited.
And if I should strike the bottle after Sheriff Truman says a particular name, make a check to the right of that name. Oh, Sheriff, I almost forgot. When you say the name, also briefly state that person's relationship to Laura Palmer.
Deputy
Ready?
Hawk has oven mittens on, like it's going to insulate his psychic energy. Here we go.
James Hurley, secret boyfriend.
James Hurley.
Josie Packard was instructed in English by Laura.
Josie Packard.
So there's no check next to either of these names?
That's correct. Please continue.
Dr. Lawrence Jacoby, Laura's psychiatrist.
Dr. Lawrence Jacoby.
You did it! You hit it!
Lucy, make a note that the bottle was struck but did not break. Very important. Andy, put that bottle back exactly where it was.
Johnny Horn. Laura was his special education tutor.
Johnny Horn.
It hit the trash can across the way.
Norma
It was, like, thrown
Jennings.
the wrong
Helped
place.
Laura organize the Meals on Wheels program.
Norma Jennings.
Oh yeah, Norma.
Shelley Johnson, waitress at diner.
Oh,
Friend.
Shelley.
Kelly Johnson.
Oh, Deputy Andy.
Sorry, Andy.
Sweetie?
It didn't hurt.
Didn't hurt.
It didn't hurt a bit.
Where there's no sense, there's no feeling, Andy. Cooper, tell me, the idea for all this really came from a dream?
Yes, it did.
Jack with one eye.
One-eyed
Maybe
Jack.
it's the letter I. But there's no I, Jack.
I think perhaps it means he only had one eye, Lucy.
Sounds like Nadine, Big Ed Hurley's wife.
No. There's a casino up north called One-Eyed Jack's across the border on the Canadian side.
That's it. We're gonna have to go up there and check that place out.
Okay.
Agent Cooper, I'm going to erase this because it's a place and not a person. Actually, maybe the person could be in the place. So should I erase it?
Yes.
Yes, a person could be in a place, or yes, I should erase
Lucy.
it.
Erase it, Lucy.
Erase it, Lucy.
Next name, Harry.
Leo Johnson.
Here we
Husband
go.
of Shelley, drives a truck. Connection with Laura.
I never did like that Leo Johnson.
Unknown.
Leo Johnson.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list.
So I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show to check out abracast.com. Check out the Discord server. We have a Discord server now. It's just a fun way to keep track. We got a group of folks in there, share news stories, bullshit around, whatever. We'll talk about lockdowns and quarantines and Fort Turkey Leg. But while you're checking out abracast.com, also check out the storefront. We got tarot cards are now available. The t-shirts. I got a bunch of great t-shirt designs out there. I don't have one really for this, that, or the other. Maybe I should unlock one. Let me think about it. And also, while you're there, consider subscribing to the Fulgar Correspondentia or the newsletter. I got something fun coming out at the beginning of next year that I don't know. It is fun. I'm sorry. It's fun, and it's been a lot of work doing it, and I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it yet. But if you sign into the Fulgar Correspondentia, maybe I'll talk about it. It's just one newsletter a month. And I keep a hold of your email addresses. I don't give them away or sell them to anybody. they're there. This is a fun way for me to share some bonus content and whatever. All right, so there's Special Agent Dale Cooper, and he's exploiting his, how did Jung say it? He's exploiting his peculiar or pathological personality structure and, forcing these synchronicities into his investigative methodology called the Tibetan method. So I just thought it was interesting running into these things. I like to marry this stuff up with pop culture, a way that people might be able to grasp an example of it better. Okay, so based on the examples mentioned, back to the book. I'm sorry for detour into Twin Peaks and Red Dragon. Based on examples mentioned above, I think it is safe to assume that he saw himself as such a creative person with a peculiar personality structure comprising of innate sensitivity and a lower threshold for the collective unconscious. Jung and the occult. Although sensitivity is crucial to Jung's personal experiences with ghostly phenomenon, it's not the only question that interested him, especially when dealing with patients. During the first half of his career, the more important question to ask was not, did ghosts really exist, but exactly who is it that sees a ghost? Under what psychic conditions does he see it, and what does a ghost signify when examined for content, i.e. as a symbol? To Jung, what mattered was the reality of the experience. And in this, he took his patients very seriously. While the psychological approach made him focus on exteriorizations, he became to have doubts about this in the second half of his life. In 1947, he writes, "To be honest, I now doubt whether an exclusively psychological method and approach does justice to the phenomenon in question. Not only the discoveries of parapsychology, but also my own theoretical considerations have led me to certain conclusions touching on the realm of nuclear physics. More precisely, the continuum of space and time. In this, we are confronted with the questions of trans-psychic reality, which is the immediate basis of the psychic. The reference to nuclear physics is, of course, an allusion to this concept of synchronicity, which he developed after his encounter with nuclear physicist Wolfgang Pauli. Synchronicity implies that there are meaningful coincidences and that events may be related to non-casual manner in a way that questions established concepts in space and time. A view that resonates with the discoveries of quantum physics. After failing to explain paranormal experiences from a strictly psychological point of view, Jung is increasingly inclined to propose a wholly new outlook on the nature of reality by suggesting the introduction of a fourth concept to complement the categories of space, time, and causality, even if it is difficult to represent the synchronicity in language due to its abstract nature. Quote, "It is not philosophical view, but an empirical concept which postulates an intellectual necessary principle," unquote. A principle belonging neither to materialism nor metaphysics. Again, he sees pre-rational psychic cognition as comparable to cognition in the human and non-human life, i.e., animals and insects and lower organisms. He writes, synchronicity ascribed to the moving body a certain psychoid property which, like space, time, and causality forms a criterion of its behavior. We must completely give up the idea of the psyche being somehow connected with the brain and remember instead the meaningful or intelligent behavior of the lower organisms, which are without a brain. Here we find ourselves much closer to the formal factor, which I have said has nothing to do with brain activity. So this reminds me, I had a synchronicity just happened to me today. I was goofing around with my wife this morning, and she was talking about it's her payday for her job, and I was like, and you get, we call it cabbage or tickets or cheddar. We have all these names for money. Anyhow, it's like, and you get tickets, and then I pointed at the cat and Edgar on the floor, and I said, and you get tickets, and then I pointed at the cat Sky, who was on the couch with my wife, and I said, and you get tickets. And then I pointed up the stairs to the cat Ruby, and I said, and you get tickets. And then when my wife logged in, because she's been working from home during Pandemic 2.0, she pulls up her Microsoft Teams or whatever non-brainwashing nonsense they have piped into her work computer, and it's a meme of Oprah Winfrey going, and you get money, and you get money, and you get money. It's crazy. I mean, it's so specific, and it's not like just something that just happened yesterday. So I don't know. Anyhow, welcome to my quarantine life. Talking to a bunch of cats about Oprah Winfrey. Back to it. As the statement reveals, Jung, who would have thought little of today's focus on neurology and the brain for expanding psychophysical realities, which he thinks is as irrational as the previous metaphysical explanations, whilst being troubled by contemporary definitions of the nature of the external physical world. He was, of course, mainly preoccupied with the nature of the inner world. Unlike Freud, he did not believe in a singular unconscious, but rather in at least two different aspects of unconscious. Jung distinguished between the personal unconscious, which is unique in every individual, and the unpersonal unconscious, better known as the collective unconscious, which is shared by a group, a nation, or in fact all sentient beings, not just human. The Akashic record of your ancestors, the fact that he did not offer a final conclusion and kept exploring the nature of the human soul from different angles must be understood within the context of his complex understanding of the world. Although he was always insisted on being a scientist and empiricist in the Kantian traditions, he does seem to have entertained the possibility of an invisible world, the subtle substances and energies which the pre-rational psyche was able to perceive, and which were in turn affected by the psyche, as the concept of synchronicity suggests. In summary, it is probably accurate to describe Jung's stance on the paranormal phenomena as incoherent, schwankend. In summary, it is probably accurate to describe Jung's stance on paranormal phenomenon as incoherent, schwankend. Or perhaps still searching would be a fairer assessment, as Jung himself humbly writes to J.B. Rhine, I cannot omit to warn you that I perhaps don't know so much about parapsychology as you suspect me to do. It is not exactly my field, and therefore I don't feel very competent to talk much about it. There is only a faint possibility that you will find something of value in the maze of my thoughts. Indeed, Jung's ideas about ghosts are far from clearly defined. However, that is so with many of his ideas, which has been the source of frustration for many a scholar used to working with clear-cut definitions and axioms. After all, rhizomatic thinking is one of Jung's core traits. It is not a coincidence that post-Jungians today tend to point out the value of Jung's work by highlighting the postmodern quality of his thinking. Jung has been interested in the occult throughout his life and had the opportunity to think about the issue from many different perspectives. He encountered an extremely wide range of empirical and theoretical materials, his own experiences with the occult starting already at a young age. There were a number of psychics in his family. First of all, his mother, Emily Jung, who left a diary where she had recorded paranormal experiences and premonitions. Her father, Samuel Prussewick, he was with the Reformed Church in Basel, and he used to feel disturbed by spirits while writing his sermons. His second wife, Augusta, is also said to have second sight. As a young girl, she had been in a state of apparent death for 36 hours, which might have altered her perception. Already as a child, Jung himself experienced dreams, visions, and apparitions, especially during the crisis after his break with Freud. He was overcome by vivid dreams and visions, which have come down to us by his recently published Red Book. Jung had apocalyptic visions and terrible destruction visiting Europe and rivers of blood, although he did not know what to make of them. At the time, he realized he had been a premonition when the war broke out. Towards the end of his life, he had a disturbing vision of the last 50 years of mankind, which was never published and only exists in the notes of his daughter. His assistant, Marie-Louise Franz, tells us he had another vision where he saw enormous stretches of the planet devastated. It was global warming, I'm sure. In an interview, von Franz says that she prayed every day that humankind would wake up from their shadow of foolishness and prevent the final catastrophe. All right, I'm going to put this one to bed, ladies and gentlemen. Advertise.com. Please have a great Thanksgiving. Please be safe. And please spend some time with your loved ones. If you got to do one of these Zoom calls or whatever, no one knows what the future holds. I need to make some plans. I need to heed my own advice here. So, hey, I love you. Thank you guys so much. We'll see. I got some big stuff planned for next year, by the way. Big stuff planned for next year. Sign to the mailing list. I think I'm going to tell you about it next month. I'm John, and this is... It has been. I have been John, and this has been the Abercast. I'm going to go order some fucking gyros, because I don't feel like cooking shit.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Abercast and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Abercast. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Abercast. The price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I am proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you could sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.